Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Hardy, former mayor of the village of Piermont, and I'm here this afternoon with Nate Mitchell, who is running for mayor of Piermont. Nate currently serves as trustee on the board. Today we're going to ask a couple of questions, focus on just a couple of questions. We will do more videos to ask more questions at a later date. We are here actually overlooking the Piermont Marsh, and I would just like to point out that environmental issues are very important to Nate, and so I think it's really fitting that we're sitting here overlooking the Piermont Marsh. So we'll get down to our first question and concern is the mayor of Piermont launched an investigation into a number of issues regarding trustee Nate Mitchell, which cost the taxpayers of Piermont a large sum of money. It's the first time that anything like this has ever been done, to my knowledge. We feel it was very politically motivated. But I would like to ask you, Nate, how do you feel about what was done, why it was done, and the results of that investigative report?
Sure. Thanks for asking. I think a lot of people in Piermont probably have similar questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to address them. So essentially what had occurred was after the primary last year, when I first got back into office as a trustee after the primary, and I became it the following year. At that first meeting, I made a motion that we repeal local law number 4 of 2023, which was the law that enacted the CBM zoning district. At this point, we had all been educated by largely the public that the county didn't accept that our law was valid, it had been improperly referred, and it was going to be a big fight. And it seemed to me like the best solution was to simply get rid of the law and refer it back to county properly, and then go back and have another public hearing so that people could give us input on this process that didn't have a lot of input when we went around the first time. So I made that motion in our July meeting, and immediately was hit with a FOIL request from the developer for all of not just my village communications, but also my personal communications with some specific individuals in the community. And so, of course, I complied with the FOIL request. I provided all these documents. They were reviewed briefly by our legal staff and then provided to the developer's attorneys for review. They came back to the village and sent us a memo saying that I could be investigated for possibly having shared confidential information. And so then the mayor took it upon himself to suggest that we should in fact allocate taxpayer funds to do this kind of investigation, which was unheard of in village history. And so once the investigation was going to proceed forward, I determined that there was no way that I could still perform my duties as a trustee while being investigated by my own board, and therefore I stepped down to wait out the investigation. It took a couple of months for the investigation to conclude, but in conclusion, it said there was no evidence of my sharing any confidential information or violating any ethics rules, and it was nothing but a waste of taxpayer money, which I was confident would be the conclusion of the investigation, but needed to let it play its course. So once the investigation was completed and there was no evidence, then I was the candidate in the November election to get reelected as trustee for a term starting the following January. I was elected. I did resume in January of 2024 in another term as trustee that I'm currently serving. So it was really just a way for your taxpayer dollars to be used in support of these developers that were trying to push through a development that we had not properly referred, using a law that wasn't accepted by county. And what could have been avoided if we simply did what I requested back in July and repealed our law and properly referred it to county.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification, Nate. And I think it's important to point out to our viewers that subsequently the Supreme Court in Rockland County ruled that the CBM zone was null and void, and residents of Piermont prevailed to stop the CBM. And that cost a considerable amount of money for the taxpayers to go to court for something that, as Nate pointed out, probably could have been avoided by just re-noticing the county on the CBM and moving forward. But thank you, Nate, for that. That's very important.